Live and in color from the NBC News radio broadcasting studios of KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM, located in beautiful Southern California, and in parallel from the Turf's Up radio studio in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Thanks for tuning in to the Water Zone show this evening. Hey, a pleasant good afternoon, morning, and evening, depending where you are in this wonderful world. Welcome to the Water Zone. I'm Rob Starr, along with Mr. Chris Davies, and we are the hosts. And hope everybody's having a great day, and it's beautiful where we are. And but Chris, how's things in the Southern California?
Smart and wonderful, buddy. I'm just going to mention that today is the last show we're going to do in July, right? Because the next show is going to be August 1st. So this is the last show we'll do during the Irrigation Association's Smart Irrigation Month, which is July. And, for our listeners, guys, if you want to see the activities that's gone on during the month, there's a great wrap-up on the irrigation, the IA website, so you can see what's happening. Still not over yet, a week to go, but go to their website, check it out. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Now, I can ask, Chris, what have you done in Smart Irrigation Month?
So I've got a what's called a flume device, Rob. I put that on my water meter, and I did it a couple of months ago, actually, and so I've been looking very carefully at my water usage. So this flume device tells me immediately, right on the spot, how much water I'm using, how much water is flowing, how much I've used in the last 24 hours. I can also go back and look what I used in the week prior, and the week prior to that, or the month prior and month prior to that. I haven't had it long enough to go more than a month or two, but it's great information. I'll tell you this. I did have lawn, Rob, and you know that I have converted to quite a bit of natural endemic species, or native garden, as they call it here. And I have significantly reduced my water usage as a result of that by almost 50%, right? So about 46%. According to the Flume app. So that's pretty significant.
More than significant. And I can attest to your property, how wonderful it looks. And you do an awesome job on that. I mean, Chris not only talks the talk, but he walks the talk. And everything about his property is just absolutely stunning, and he knows how to do it right. So, Chris, you're a leader in this, so we appreciate that.
I appreciate that, Rob. Also, probably make a mention for our listeners who are waiting to hear the California Water News segment with Chris Austin. But, Rob, I know she's not going to be with us this week, and we wish her well. She's on a family journey and a family quest right now, and wish her well with that. And also just mention that up in Northern California where Chris lives, near Chico, there's a raging wildfire up there right now. And so all the best to Chris, and I don't think she's in immediate danger. No worries there, listeners, but just all the best to Chris.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, what she's gone for is she went to visit her mom and dad.
Yeah.
So nothing bad.
No.
She's been working a lot, hasn't had time to go up and see them. And so she asked, could she go? And I said, of course you can. Family comes first. So hope if she's listening and her mom or dad are listening, hi, Mom and Dad, and hope you're doing well, and you got a good daughter there. So anyway, that's what Chris is doing today. So we're happy for that. Other than that, we have a great guest, and I'm anxious to talk about him, and do want to bring him on. And Chris, you want to introduce him?
Yeah, certainly. So we've been kind of waiting for this for a while, Rob. As you know, I know you know Lou Bendon fairly well, who is our guest, and I've known him for a little while as well, and I've known who he is, and we're not exactly pizza and beer every Friday guys, but I certainly know Lou. Just to give you a little background, he's just like you and I, Rob, kind of long in tooth, if you will, right? So 50 years in the trades. He's been a marketer. He's been a strategist. He's been new market development. He's been lots of background. And just recently, I just want to kind of give a background because we can talk a lot about Lou, and we will here in just a minute because he's going to have a good amount of time with us here today. But he got hired by a company called Planned Marketing Solutions, Inc., PMSI is their acronym. And he's been in business, in trades, in all kinds of work. I mean, PMSI has clients like Intel, Nike, Dell, Chevron, Birkenstock, and a bunch of others. I mean, they're well known. Makita, Simpson Strong Tie, Henry Roofing. I don't know. The list goes on and on. But we have Lou on because he's got a particular interest in the world of water, and that's why he's here today to talk to us. He was very, very much involved in the beginning of smart water application technology through the Irrigation Association. We were just talking about them at the end of their Smart Irrigation Month here in July. But that's where I knew Lou from, and seeing his name and what he wrote. He was on that committee, and he served as an advisor on SWAT. I don't know. It's got to be at least 5, 6, half a dozen years, maybe more. We can ask Lou about that when he comes on. But he was an integral part of the IA's effort to transform the market over to smart technology, and that's kind of been his forte in this group, and that's why he's here to see us and talk to us here today on the Water Zone. And so, Lou Bendon, we welcome you to the Water Zone.
Lou?
Yeah, I'm
Lou,
here.
you with us there, buddy?
I really am have a hard time hearing you.
I don't know.
Thank you very much.
I'm
sorry?
I guess he's not at this moment. I'm going to put you on mute, Chris, or me on mute, and I am going to try to reach him a different way. So
you guys sound good.
Back.
No, you guys sound good.
All right. No problem, guys. All right. So for our listeners, let me give you a couple of different updates here. So we're looking at some of the stuff that's coming up on the agenda in our industry, and we've got the irrigation show that'll be coming up later on this year. It's in Long Beach. Many of you are aware of that, I'm sure. It's going to be a great show. It's local for Rob and I, so we're certainly going to be there and doing as much as we can to support it. It is November 4th through 7th, Long Beach, California. So expect all of you guys, everyone, to be there of our listeners who can make it. There's just a ton of exhibitors in this show. We know that the show floor is 60-70% full right now, so it's going to be a great show. For those of you who haven't been to Long Beach before, I know the Irrigation Association has been at Long Beach before, and I don't know if this is the third, maybe fourth time it's been there, but it's a great venue to have it. There's a ton of stuff to see in Long Beach. It's right on the ocean, right next to the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach. A lot of stuff to see, great restaurants, great museums. There's the Aquarium of the Pacific is there. So for a few guys, if you're even thinking about going, I'd really give it a lot of great thought. So given that, and just looking at how much Rob and I have been working on future shows, I know that if Rob comes back on, he'll back me up on this, but we've been working on a series of shows that are coming up that are multiple faceted. In other words, instead of doing one show with one guest, we're looking at doing a series of shows now. In fact, the show today with Lou Bendon is kind of the start of that. So we're looking at being able to do that. All right, guys, I'm going to pause for just a second here while we go to our commercials, if you will. Eric, our engineer, if you can run our commercials, please.
Drainage is a valuable addition to most any landscaping project, and the most common stormwater problems are easy to identify when you know what to look for. Before we begin, a few quick notes. In each of the cases you're about to see, the installation of a drainage solution will likely take only a few hours, but can vary depending on the products used, the length of the pipe runs, depth, soil type, and other factors. Also, call before you dig. Do not break ground until all buried utilities have been clearly marked. First up, downspout runoff. This is the cause of many of the most notorious drainage problems, and the symptoms are plain to see, ranging from washed-out landscape beds to serious foundation problems like wet crawl spaces and even flooded basements. Compared to the price of repairing these issues if left untreated long-term, The drainage products to solve them now are very cost effective. For areas where no trees overhang the roof or there are leaf guards, downspout adapters are ideal for connecting gutters to drainage pipe. Where trees overhang, use catch basins or low-profile adapters with grates and basin filters to help block debris and collect discharge. These should all move water away from the foundation to a safe area downstream. Pro tip: the average home has at least 2 downspouts, 4 if the garage is attached. Next, let's look at problems from water collecting in low areas. This can cause soil saturation, and in more severe cases, ponding. In times of prolonged rainfall, these areas become muddy and unusable, and a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Product solutions for water and lawn problems include grates to block large debris from entering the drainage piping, and catch basins with sumps allowing smaller debris to settle for removal during maintenance. Both solutions should be connected to a drainage pipe to move water away from the problem area to a safe discharge location. For situations when water can't be discharged to another location, the NDS Flowwell Engineered Dry Well allows for detention and infiltration of collected runoff. Rather than a barrier, view problems like this as an upsell opportunity. Here's another hint: call your customers shortly after rainfall when these problems will already be top of mind and a priority to fix. Another common drainage problem is flooded or oversaturated landscape beds in natural areas. Just like lawns, beds that remain flooded for extended periods of time can encourage mosquito breeding. Ornamental plants often become stressed, are more susceptible to disease, and can even perish. Additionally, flooded landscape beds adjacent to a structure can contribute to foundation problems. Using domed atrium grates as a pipe inlet, or with a catch basin or low-profile adapter, will help solve this problem. Atrium grates are most suited for landscape beds in natural areas as they drain runoff flows containing mulch and other debris better than flat grates. NDS filters in a catch basin provide additional protection for the drainage system by preventing smaller debris from entering the downstream piping. The grates, basins, or low-profile adapters connect to a drainage pipe to move water away to a safe area. Pop-up emitters are a good choice at the point of discharge. Keep an eye out for symptoms of these common drainage problems on your next site visit. Once you've identified the problem and the possible solution, it's time to connect with Site 1 and NDS. With their resources and support, you can add drainage to your services and get the job done right.
Okay, back to the Water Zone. We appreciate you all sticking around. Sorry we had some problems with the phone tie lines, and we got them all fixed. And we're going to bring on Mr. Lou Benden. Lou, how are you today?
Thank you.
You doing well?
I am doing really well. Is this Rob or Chris?
This is Rob.
Hi, Rob. How are you? Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, sorry about the tie lines, and we got that all fixed technically, so we're ready to roll. And Chris gave a great introduction to you, though you probably didn't hear it at the beginning of the show.
I heard every other word, but it was fine,
Oh, okay. Well, we got an interesting topic we want to talk about, which you proposed to us earlier, about decarbonizing water. And I understand what the word means, and Chris does, and you do, but a lot of our listeners don't know what that means. And why would you decarbonize water? What does water have carbon in it? I mean, these are questions that we're getting from our listeners, and kind of maybe bring us in on the scoop of all of this and how that relates to what you and your team is doing.
Well, it's really not about how much carbon is in water. It's how much carbon is required to treat and move water.
Right.
And we have to take a step back and look at what the impact of what climate change would be on the water industry. Water providers have a mission. Their mission is to provide water on demand safely and securely. But climate change affects the patterns of rainfall and weather in certain areas. So some years you're going to have floods, and some years you're going to have drought. And in California, we're really used to drought. But the amount of energy required to pump water so that it's moved from the source to the treatment centers and then treated and pumped to your house so that it comes to your house at 60 psi is enormous. We're talking about 3 to 5% of all the carbon produced in the United States is to convey water. Now, think about it. The water provider not only needs to provide use all this energy, but they're affected by climate change in a significant way. And that energy cost creates more carbon. So essentially they're part of the problem. And it's big enough, the amount of energy, the carbon that they produce, that it equates to the level of what the aviation industry produces in carbon. So,
right.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And there's a cost with it, because the energy that they use is the same energy you use, and they're paying rates similar to yours. So why is that a big deal? Energy for utility can be anywhere, depending on who you talk to and which utility, their second or third highest cost. First highest cost is people. The second highest cost could be debt service. But it could be the third highest cost is definitely energy, and the only thing you can actually control is energy, because you can't do a thing about people. I mean, you're not going to lay off people because they're operating as efficiently as they can, and you certainly can't do anything about debt service because you have to pay it. So what is basically a variable cost that you can control? It's energy. So that's what we focused on, because, at the end of the day, we are putting ourselves in a position that's virtually untenable. And the truth of the matter is the utilities are part of the problem.
Right. So there's also another term they use in the industry with decarbonation they call degasification. And I guess that's an effective technology to help take the carbon dioxide out of the water. Is that correct?
No, it's basically I'm not sure about degasification, but I am about decarbonization. And all decarbonization means is that you're reducing your carbon footprint. And you do it by a variety of ways, starting with creating renewable energy. They have solar plants, they have solar farms. There are companies that have invented systems that go in line and convert excess pressure, which is a waste product that needs to be bled off at pressure control valves, pressure reducing valves, and they convert it into clean energy. And at the same point in time, they're managing pressure and creating data to prevent water. So that's typically when you talk about water and energy and the nexus of water and energy, you're essentially talking about the amount of energy it takes to convey and treat water, which you have to use. The question is, are you going to use energy that's carbon-based or not?
Okay. Yeah. A lot of people, when they hear the terms, think of something different. And that's why we wanted you to come on and talk more about it, so people could, even us, even me, to understand it even better, to what needs to happen. And this is a big deal from what I've read. And there's entities working on this now to enhance it. Well, I'll call it technology to do this more efficiently. Where are we on the scale of starting this? We're in the middle of it. We're moving forward. What's the biggest advantage of doing this now? And is everybody on board about it? Or is this still an idea that certain people have and the rest of the world hasn't caught on yet?
It's the water industry. So it's, the reality, it's the way it works. It's like asking how long did it take to create a market transformation for smart controllers. to go from inefficient irrigation to efficient irrigation. I started with that in 2003, and just now we're starting to see a difference.
Yeah.
There are some utilities. First of all, to answer your question, the AWWA has made it a priority. But to me, it depends on how you define priority. They have come up with a plan to reach net zero in the industry by 2050. Now, by 2050, I'll be 104, Rob. I'm not a patient guy, and by nature.
Going to the ribbon cutting, then I suppose at 2050.
I don't think so. I think they came up with a plan. It's wonderful. It's a great idea, but it's not aggressive enough, and it doesn't really look at it as market driven. So, to really answer your question, that depending on who you ask, will let you know where they are in the spectrum of change. For example, East Bay Mud in, I want to say 2003, whatever, started the process to decarbonize their utility. They call it climate neutral. And one of the early things they did at that point was to do an energy recovery on the wastewater plant. And it's so successful that they generate 140% of the energy they use. Now, we're talking about a lot of wastewater. We're talking about a lot of energy. They provide wastewater services for 740,000 people. They serve water for 1.4 million people, residents, businesses, 20 cities, 15 incorporated communities. They have a budget of $2.7 billion a year with 2,000 employees. And they made decarbonization a priority. And the way it happened was it started with top down. The board said, we want to do this. So originally, it was going to become climate neutral, decarbonized by 2035. They've now moved the needle to 2030. So Clifford Chan, who's been part of this group that I've been working with, and I asked him, I said, Clifford, it took you all these years to reduce carbon by 46%. How in the next 6 years are you going to reduce it by 54%? And the reality is they will. So LADWP has set 2035 as a goal. So each one of these utilities, bad news, Rob, there's no magic bullet, and all these utilities work independently. And they have a tendency to want to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. Nothing surprising. At the same point in time, which is truly unique to the water industry, and God bless them, there's this thing called the water cooler effect. They share and don't compete. So when technologies happen and occur, and people have had some successes with it, they share the information with each other. It's certainly not what happens in the irrigation industry because you're all competitive as manufacturers. It's not the case with the water industry.
Right.
The problem is that they're so decentralized that it's really hard to reach everybody. So I'm really excited about being on this program so that we can maybe raise the level of awareness by utilities that it's not just possible, that the idea of decarbonizing can be a profit center for you. Now, they're a nonprofit. They don't think in terms of profit, but they do think in terms of cost. They do think in terms of how all this affects ratepayers. And it directly affects the ratepayers because at the end of the day, Rob, you're paying for all this.
Yeah.
I'm paying for all this. It's in the price of water.
How high, let me just ask the question and I turn it over to Chris. How high is the ratepayer giving to achieve this? And then when would that be repaid back in terms of lower cost since it's a higher efficiency, a better cost rate for the ratepayer? I guess what I'm saying is when will they they're paying for it, but they want to see some return. And there's a lot of times I've never seen a water agency or a utility where they say, we got to do this project. We need to put some, charges to your bill every month. And then they achieve it and they never lower the bill. Because it should be a win for both parties, the water agency and the users.
Well, actually, it should be a win-win-win, but I totally agree with what you're saying. But if you reduce costs, you reduce the pressure on increasing rates.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, they go bottom line just like everybody else. I mean, they have, CFOs who are looking at their numbers and they're assessing what the dollars are and what their costs are. And if you're talking about reducing your third or second highest expense, then it's measurable from the perspective of the customer. So I don't really see that in the same way. I see this as protecting the utility. I think it's protecting the ratepayer. And the ratepayer is king to me because they're the ones, like you say, who pay all the bills.
Yeah.
So anything you can do to do that is to reduce costs is good for the ratepayer. But think about it. A lot of what you're doing is to protect water. And that's their mission, to provide water on demand safely and securely. And everything they do to contribute to climate change affects water. But the things they do to mitigate climate change, in many cases, generate revenue. So there's one company I've been working with. Take a step back. For 10 years, I've been acting as a mentor for the Clean Tech Open. And the Clean Tech Open is an accelerator for emerging companies with emerging technologies in the clean tech space. I only work with water, and I keep looking for something in irrigation, and I finally found one. But one company I worked with for like 4 or 5 years now, they created a product that, as I was alluding to earlier, that works as a pressure control valve, a pressure reducing valve. But instead of wasting pressure, it converts it to an asset. So what does that mean in money? They have the ability, because of the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the amount of energy they produce as cost of return, an ROI, if you will, that he could pay back in 4 years.
That's awesome.
So, business guy, 4 years, but you're talking about a product that lasts for 30. So I'm telling you, as a ratepayer, I can do something that will protect the infrastructure of our system, reduce our carbon footprint, and reduce our operational expenses for 26 years.
Yeah.
It's just insane. So can I tell you how they give the money back to you? I talked about this exact same conversation. I mean, I'm a business guy just like you. So when I heard about this, I thought, well, this is a cash cow for utilities. Obviously, utilities don't think in those terms because they're not only nonprofit, the idea of cash cow is outside the nomenclature.
Right.
But when I talked to Marianne about it, I said, you could give 1/3 of that money back to the utilities, put 1/3 to the ratepayers. You could put out 1/3 against your operational expenses, and then you could have 1/3 to fund conservation programs. So it's just because it generates so much money that is attractive while it's reducing your carbon footprint, while it's enhancing a degrading electric grid that's old, it's aging, at risk, because what you do with renewable energy is you take pressure off the grid. And this is just the start. From a technology perspective, this is really, I would say to you, it's just getting rolling, and what's getting rolling are the number of products that have been brought online, that have been tested, they've been vetted, they're safe and secure, industry safe and secure. They have a process. They can't just mess around and just bring out a product. I got this new widget. It's going to make your business so much better. Prove it. So you have to. And it takes a couple of years, but once you're done with the process, the last stage is you've installed this product at a utility and it's fully operational. And then it works or it doesn't work.
Yep. I'm going to let Chris jump in here. Chris, I know you got some questions.
I do. Lou, and welcome to the show, buddy. I apologize again, like Rob, at the onset of the program here, but we got all that fixed out. So I'm just going to let you know something also. I monitored the chat board during the show here, so we have tons of interested people listening right now, getting a lot of comments about the term you used of the water industry being at the nexus of water and energy. So I'm going to make a couple of comments, and I got one question as it relates to climate change, because that seems to be the common factor coming up on the chat board here. So let me make the comments first. So, lots of people saying here, great overview, great summary you did. Everybody knows that the water industry, kind of et al., right, is a very large consumer of energy. But also, for those of us that have been in this industry for a while, and all the guests we've had on the Water Zone show, we know that we got a heck of a ways to go. There's a long way to go before our industry becomes carbon neutral, if you will, or whatever term you want to put at it. And I appreciate what you just said about what the industry is doing, some of the things the industry is doing to practically and cost-effectively look at solutions to reduce or even eliminate the carbon footprint or become carbon neutral or whatever. But given all that, here's a question that's kind of rising on the chat board here, and everybody's kind of looking at the connection to climate change, right? And so, you and I, Lou and Rob have talked. We've talked before, and I think really for us, and you can validate this for us if you will, Lou. Climate change is kind of old news, right? I mean, it's been around for a while. Get over it. Is there more convincing needed, or kind of where do you place climate change in as a gauge in what we've discussed so far?
I think it's the outcome. So I think that is what you wind up suffering from. But it's clear that not everybody agrees.
Yeah.
There are people out there who are naysayers. But if you look at the vast majority of scientists, they all agree. See, I really care about climate change. But climate change is the outcome. It's not the solution.
Yeah.
So the solution, at least from the water provider's perspective, is, and what they can actually do about it, assuming they care about it, is to decarbonize, carbon neutral, net zero, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. But what matters is the task required to put them on the roadmap to change. And there are, like 150,000 water providers in the United States, but the top 200 serve 30% of the country. So if we can target those top 200, then we can move the needle, and utilities are going to do what they think is best for them.
Sure.
So, example, I've done a lot of market research in this industry. In water, 800 in-depth interviews, 55 focus groups, slew of quant. And I love it. I love talking to people and asking them open-ended questions. And one of our clients was the Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District in Salt Lake City. They're a bedroom community for Salt Lake City, the largest wholesaler in the state. They sit at the base of Park City. You look up the hill, and there's a ton of snow. So we did quant, and it was very interesting. But the interview that I did with the state of Utah's president of the state Senate was fascinating to me. And as a marketer, I'm always looking for a hook. And this guy was not only the president of the state Senate, but he was also a property manager, hence the interview. And we were hired by Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District because in the 10 years, which, by the way, just passed, they are going to be a deficit. That with all the water they had, they are going to be a deficit. And the reason is for capital water use at that day and age was water use per capita water use in Jordan Valley was 235 gallons a day. Put it in perspective. In East Bay Mud, in their service area, per capita water use is 50. So there is a lot of waste. The industry says that 58% of all urban water use is for irrigation and landscape, and half is wasted. Well, in Jordan Valley, it's bigger than that. It's 4 or 5 times that. So in interviewing this property manager, I asked him, well, because he said, don't tell me we're going to run out of water. It's a bunch of crap. But I said, well, how do you feel about climate change? He says, it's a Democratic hoax. It's what the liberals are going to do. And then I said to him, well, how do you feel about waste? And he said, it's a sin. So the key in marketing, and it's always the trick, is to find out what buttons make people move in the direction you want them to move. So people don't want to buy anything from anybody. They want to solve problems. So what you need to do in consultative sales is to understand what that problem actually is and market to them in a way that you get them to do what you want them to do, but they benefit in a way that matters to them. So if they don't care about climate change, perhaps they care about water loss control, because you can use the same devices that prevent water loss, pressure management, data, DMAs, that generate revenue, that will also reduce carbon, but at the same point in time, reduce your operational expenses. So it is that win-win-win. Everybody wins. You just have to figure out what win matters to the customer. But there's a lot of people who care about carbon. And for those people, what we need to do is to get them on the program, to get them started and addressing it. And for me, it's always you start with the lowest hanging fruit. What's the easiest thing you can do today and make a difference? And that, you're hearing it from me as a marketer, but the other people who are part of this panel session that we put together, are decision makers. It's Clifford Chan, general manager of East Bay Mud, George Hawkins.
East Bay Mud, yeah.
Retired general manager of DC Water, who's the founder and CEO of Moonshot Mission, Christina Amadpour, who is the president of Isle Utilities, and on and on and on. And by the way, I'd like to shout out to Greg Semler, who's the CEO of Pipe Energy, who wound up investing with the AWWA to create a series of webinars on climate change, not to sell product. Not to. It's about helping the utilities get on the process and structure and roadmap to make change. And, everybody, and it's weird because they're individuals, so they all make decisions just like you'd make for your home. It's independent, and it's about what's in it for me.
Yeah, the Whiffam theory, I guess. What's in it for me? We're looking forward to getting Greg Semler come on the show as well, Lou, as you know that. But listen, I drop notes. I always make an observation and ask a question, so I'm going to do that again. So, I'm just.
Did I not answer your question?
You did. You absolutely did, Lou, and in grand style as well. But the observation I'm gonna make is, we've had tons of guests on the show here on the Water Zone. We've been to conferences. We've done all this stuff. It seems that we're all the things that you and I and Rob have just been talking about over the last 20, 30 minutes or so. They're still being discussed, right? So I'm just gonna tag back to what you said about the reality of 2050, if you will, right? Those of us at the microphones or at the phone right now, 2050 is a long way away, right? And if we're already long in the tooth and gray in the beard, imagine what we're going to be like then. So, we're not going fast enough, right? This needs to have more velocity behind it, more of a push. We need to try everything, keep what works, right? All that kind of stuff. what's your feelings? How can we speed this thing up? What can we do to light the fire behind it?
Well, the term that we're looking for is market transformation. It's a transform a market. It starts with awareness that you have a problem, education, what to do with it, and then motivation to make a change. So what we can do with it is what we're doing today, is talking about it, hopefully reaching utilities. Now, Greg was gracious enough to fund the first panel that we did on the opportunities that exist with decarbonization. And it's people who have had success in doing it. So it's strange. I mean, we did this with the AWWA. We had 750 people sign up. And I argued with them that we needed 90 minutes and not 60. And they told me, no, 60 minutes is all they'll stand for. It's just not true. And we had 700 plus people sign up for this webinar just to hear what these people had to say. And Christina moderated. She's a fabulous moderator. So there's a high level of interest. And the people we have to reach are the decision makers, the board members, the community. I would argue the community. Some people would argue that's too much. But the pressure pressure is placed by the communities on the boards who make decisions, who put that pressure on the GM, who circles the wagons with their teams and figures out how to execute the mission. I don't care if you're in a public agency or a business, it's still the same.
Sure.
I mean, your boss tells you what you want to accomplish and you go do it.
Yeah.
And then you're held accountable for what you do. And so, hats off to these guys. But it's not just them. There's Moulton Miguel. Clifford, if you're listening and I forgot, he told me about an agency back east that's already carbon neutral. So the idea is to create critical mass. And to create critical mass, we have to reach enough people to get them on the continuum, and start making change. And then as change occurs, you start building critical mass. And that's the stage we're in. And the AWWA has a plan, and I'm just hoping to influence it, accelerate it, do whatever I can as a retired person with no employer, no revenue coming in from this, because I don't care about it, and see if we can make a difference. And that's why George Hawkins and Clifford Chan and Christina and Jane Gashwab, I'm not ruining her name. Jane is she works as the chief climate. She's basically responsible for decarbonizing New York City's water department. Not important, just New York City.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of utilities who are actively working and engaging, in this, but they're all out there as one-offs. So if we can circle the wagons and start creating a higher level of awareness, then we can actually make a difference. To me, somebody who's, worked in a level as a strategist, worked for an agency that planned marketing solutions, these are planned marketing solutions, and for a boss who's just absolutely avid about strategy. We wrote a lot of plans. And the first thing you do in a plan is you identify your challenges, and then you set an objective. You identify your challenges, you identify your opportunities, and then you develop strategies. And my thinking has been to create enough interest in what we're doing, and it's not we, it's the collective we, to create a meeting of the minds where enough people came together to address what these challenges and opportunities are so we could create some effective, actionable strategies for the industry. Because that's how you create a plan. And to get the strategies, you have to get people engaged in it. And these same people who you would have working on that plan would be the same people you're trying to have implement the plan for their utility. So you get critical mass. You get more people engaged and accelerates the objectives that the AWWA wants to meet. But, I'm old, like you said, and 2035 seems, far enough in the future where it's achievable. Will we get the carbon neutral net zero by 2035? I'm not sure I care that much. I mean, others would, and they might, be angry at me for saying that. The reality is we just have to get on the spectrum. We have to start the process and get people working towards that end.
Lou, because you're a California guy, the State Water Board passed this thing of making California, make conservation a way of life. And there was a lot of brouhaha in public meetings and things with different water agencies who spent millions and millions of dollars over the last decade or so trying to help reduce water usage by customers. And now this new regulation will be where now they're going to impose fines on the water agencies, water districts, if they don't keep their customers in check, and it's pretty steep. So they want to get it down to this 30-something gallon, 35 gallons a day per capita from what it is today in a time period. So
good luck with that.
Yeah. So they're actually going to sell less water, bottom line. But the costs to operate are still going to be there to keep the operations going. And with inflation and things, the prices will go up in the cost of operating. Do you think that going carbon neutral and doing this decarbonization is going to help? As you said, it can be very profitable. Do you think that would help save the water agencies, a lot of them, from going broke or out of business?
Well, I don't think the water agencies are ever going to go broke or out of business because they'll just increase their rates because you have to have water. But that aside, part of the issue of climate change and the carbon they produce is a thing called non-revenue water. Non-revenue water is water that's lost in their system.
Right.
That is acquired, treated, pumped, and is never paid for by the customer for a number of reasons. So reducing non-revenue water will reduce the issue of demand. And the State Water Board regulates non-revenue water, but what you're talking about is something actually different. What the State Water Board did was they did to the utilities in the same way the utilities did to your customers. They made your customers, see Santa Barbara, et cetera, have a water budget.
Right.
Well, that's what the State Board did. They made them have a water budget, and they made them have a water budget for utilities that already are requiring their customers to have a water budget. But there's a problem with it. The problem with water budgets is you can't manage what you don't measure. And in landscape water, unless you have a dedicated irrigation meter, you can't separate, the indoor from outdoor or one zone from another zone, et cetera. You just need to be able to isolate water. However, we work with the CLCA, with the California Landscape Contractors Association, hired us to help figure out how to get more uptake in their water budgeting, their water management certification program. It's essentially water budget. So what I did was I did the qualitative research and talked to many of the CEOs of the largest landscape maintenance firms in the state. And what I learned was surprising because they were already in the process of implementing it, but the barrier to it was they couldn't get access to the data, that they had to pay somebody on their staff to go out, manually read the meter, enter the data on a sheet or a tablet, and then upload it to the cloud. They had to pay for that, and their customers aren't willing to pay it. So I heard earlier you were talking about Flume. A product like Flume or something that gets the data out of the field is really valuable to the contractor because it takes the cost out of water. It takes the cost out of reporting. It doesn't change their job to manage water because they're water managers, and the same thing's true with utilities. So that's why, water loss is a big deal. And it's less in California because it's regulated, but there's only a handful of states that regulate it. And when you're talking about water loss, I did a study on it. So I interviewed the leading authorities on water loss. And what I found out is that they already know what to do. And the problem is getting people to do it. I mean, it's a three-legged stool. But water loss in the United States can range from anywhere from 5% to this one district I learned in Kentucky that uses, I hope you're sitting, 70% of the water they produce.
Yeah, that's a ton. That's a ton. Lou, I tell you, we're going to have to give up our minutes here to KNBC because they're going to pop us up on their news hour in about 45 seconds, buddy. But appreciate you coming on. We know you're going to come back, Lou, and you're going to have some other guests with us because I related we're going to have a series that's coming up. Appreciate your insights and discussion today, Lou, and we'll let our listeners know when we'll be back on the air. So appreciate it, Lou. Hope you have a great rest of the day yourself, sir.
Appreciate it, and thank you for the opportunity. This is real important. And I applaud you guys for what you're doing.
We'll get back and make a 3 to 5 part series about this. I think it's really important too.
All right, great. Thank you, Rob. Chris, my pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
For our listeners,
talk to you later.
Most important thing we say is green help our blue. Because if you like green, you gotta have blue. Good night, everybody.
Stay tuned next week. See you.
NBC News on